Again, I want to thank you for the invitation with the topic of the vortex nature of anomalous ball lightning. In this topic, I will not speak about all the types of ball lightning, but I will emphasize the idea on the anomalous ball lightning, which have a lot of energy and can be some sort of vortex of physical vacuum. Everybody knows that ball lightning can be not only with the ball, but some sort of tape. It can be like, it can appear from the linear lightning hit into the earth. And it obtains a huge amount of energy. In this photo, I show the result of the explosion of the ball lightning of the Earth, and it is about 10 and 9th power joules inside. Here we can see the not recent, in 2013, the impact of ball lightning on a house, and it was estimated that energy here will be, the density of energy is from 2 to 9 by 10 and 9th power joule per meter cubed. So, and in some observations, and reaches even more, up to several units of 10 and minus and 10th power. There are many unknown and not understandable phenomenon with ball lightning. Sometimes it moves people, sometimes it leads to disappearance of rings and bracelets from the people's body, and these questions until now are unsolved. Energy of ball lightning can be even more than the 10th joule, 10 in 10th power joules per meter cubed. So the question how it contains such an energy, which is 2 orders of magnitude higher than the energy of explosive. There were many different theories devoted to ball lightning. Here you can see the authors and main ideas of the ball lightning forms and substance. For example, there were a lot of, first work was made by Frankel in 1937. It was the idea that ball lightning is a bubble or a vortex, but it has small energy. Another word were nickel, also considered as fluid sphere, some sort of fluid bubble inside the sphere. It's some sort of vortex. Gaidukov considered ball lightning also as a fluid sphere. Mitrofanov and Atsukovsky, they considered ball lightning as ether vortex. Ether, in their understanding, is physical vacuum. Kapitsa considered ball lightning as spheroid. Its energy was small. Or Furaton obtained spheroid in his experiments. Loki considered ball lightning as the air discharge induced by the flux of ions produced by linear lightning. Dmitriev considered ball lightning as hot sphere with very high energy. Grigoriev considered ball lightning as melt or with high temperature and high energy. It was sphere of a bubble. Saranin considered also it's like melt. sphere or a bubble. Stakhanov considered a sphere, Stepanov a sphere, Smirnov a sphere. In red, you can see that part of the theories were predicting high values of energy or density of energy. For example, Nikitin considered dynamic capacitor in the shell or in the cover as a sphere. Bychkov considered in his work, in many works, as the charged sphere with some sort of vapor inside, and its energy was about 10⁵ joules per cubic centimeter. It was about those that of moderate ball lightning. About the experiments, there were experiments where there was obtained some flashes, or to say some fires. For example, Kuzmin and Shvilkin, they obtained some sort of the luminescent ball. His experiment was made as though he was delivered a gas, combusting gas. There, in this direction, there was electrodes, and the switching on electrodes, they ignited gas, and in the gas dynamic construction, it was realized like a ball. Such a ball was rising up, and later it transformed into the vortex. With this, in this area, there were made many experiments with so-called Gachinsky discharge, which was made by Shabanov in 2002, and early in 1890 of the last centuries, the experiment was made as those two electrodes. One of them was located over the liquid, another was in the liquid. There was chosen such voltages and currents at which over there appeared some sort of a ball, luminescent, which was moving hazardously over the surface. The Shabanov made the following. He made such a scheme. It was the liquid, it was one electrode over the liquid, it was another electrode inside the liquid, it was the circuit, and the switching on about 10 megajoules were delivered into this area. There appeared some sort of the discharge over the surface, then appeared some object, that is the backside photo of it, and they claimed that it is ball lightning. But in some Vlasov, but not Stepanov said that he made the experiment and he looked at this ball from above, and he saw that it is not a ball, but a vortex. So we made, with Savinkova and Pilov, made calculations of this situation. Here was the area of energy put. The energy put was the same as in experiments, and the area of the put was as in the experiments. The energy was realized during the time as in experiments, and we obtained the rise in such an object, which in the end was transformed into the vortex. So this sort of the glowing fireball was at the beginning only fireball, but in the end it was the the vortex. And we can, from our calculation, say that it was the gas dynamic structure in air. It is interesting because it showed that the new type of the discharges, like Gaussian discharges, can produce some sort of luminescent large fireballs with many properties similar to real ball lightning. Now we can return to one of the most interesting scientists. It is Tesla, who produced in Colorado his plasma devices. This is it is Tesla coils, and he produced a lot of objects with properties like ball lightning. Tesla considered that ball lightning is some sort of ether, physical vacuum now object, and he considered that only if an experiment is successful and it can impact on the physical vacuum, in this case you can produce the ball lightning. His experimental device was as follows: 2 Tesla coils, another transformer circuit at some frequency. There is the increase of electric voltage on the first coil, and on another coil between them appears very high electric field, and in the inside of it appear some balls. This experiment, when I showed, was repeated by quorums, and they obtained, that is their device, and they obtained some sort of fireballs. Kapeikin in Russia in 2012 repeated the experiments, and he produced also fireballs, but these fireballs in quorum's experiments can propagate through glass, and with this one, and that is the pictures, the photos of Kapeikin's device, and it some sort resembles the hit of linear lightning into the earth with producing of some fireballs. In this connection, we have to remember the Abrahamson and Dennis idea. The idea was as follows: the linear lightning impacts the soil. There appears some fulgurate area. It takes place the transformation of soil particles in CO2 clusters, which produce some sort of vortex structure. It erupts from the earth, and what we see is the ball lightning. They made such an experiment. This was high voltage electrodes. It was soil. It was the zero electrode. So between them was realized a discharge. And this discharge impacted the soil. Yes, they obtained some sort of vortices over the area of impact, but they lived not very long, and they were not the fireballs. Nevertheless, we can say that the idea on the producing of some sort of cluster filaments was successful, the idea, and so they could by filter obtain these structures. Emelin and Bychkov tried to do the following experiment. They tried to put into the discharge chamber some sort of material. The chamber was in such a cover in order it would not be exploded. It would not be exploded during the discharge. Inside this chamber, it could be located some material. For example, here we put the aluminum powder, and we obtained some sort of this flash, some sort of the fireball, which lasted points of seconds, but it was about a meter wide. So it was some sort of fireball, but it was not. Too long-lived. Another experiment with that device was as follows. Here was inside it was located by basalt wool, and basalt wool was taken from the idea that the linear lightning can impact some sort of organics on the Earth, and the discharge was realized inside this device, and on the outlet there appeared some flying fireballs which blasted with sound. And when it was possible to look through the device, to cut the device, we could find the fireball precursor, and we could see that even at the precursor there was the many component structure with some sort of the cover of the shell. You see such a structure which shows that there was some sort of boiling inside of it. So there was a continuation of these experiments with the help of capillary discharge. The device was as follows. Here was one electrode, here was another electrode. Inside between the electrodes was polymethyl methacrylate or organic glass, and this device produced plasma. Sometimes we located inside this device, we made some sort of chamber here, and at the discharge there appeared some sort of fireballs, but here it was another sort of experiments. Here you can see that at the discharge they produced some plasma about 10-12 centimeters long. It is in the wax, this plasma forming plate. Here's the organic glass. So here you can see another formulation of the experiment. Here it is the plasma generator, and here we are directing it on some melting materials, and when we copper and not copper, no, melting materials, they produces such traces at some sort of fireballs. These fireballs have some very interesting nature. In some experiments, these fireballs transformed into some drops, and in some experiments they transformed into the explosive materials. And you can see that these photos which reflect that when these fireballs are dropped on some solid surface, they explode. There was the sizes was up to 3 millimeters, and the lifetime of such fireballs was about 1.5 seconds. So in some sort of fireballs or ball lightnings were produced. When here you can see another photo, that is the discharge. Then appears these fireballs at its in frames about 1.5 seconds, but here we caught these fireballs into the vessel with water, and we found that there appeared such balls with the cover. Inside there was drops of metal, and it was the surface. So we could say that in these experiments we could produce fireballs with the cover and some vaporized material inside them. So that some theories of ball lightning with the solid surface and vaporized material inside can work. Here we made estimates of the energy it was, which can be located inside these fireballs. It is a photo of the internal structure of these balls, and here we made having the material. It was mixture of oxygen, sand, and plumbum. We could estimate the energy, and it was about 3.2 by 10 and 9th power joule per cubic centimeter per cubic meter, and it was about the value of the moderate ball lightning energy density. So this question, как in nature can be produced 10 and 9th in 11th power joule per cubic centimeters. So from this, there was the idea that the ball lightning, moderate ball lightning, can be produced by the following. Firstly, the impact of lightning on Earth takes place. Then here appears some sort of cover. Inside of cover either is some powder, or in another approach it is some melt. Under the pressure which is produced by by impact of linear lightning, this object is flying away, and it flies, and then it explodes when the surface is destroyed. In both cases, with liquid inside, liquid vapor inside, or some powder inside, they can explain the appearance of fireballs. And because it was created by the lightning, they were charged and could levitate over the Earth. They charged, and want to emphasize that mainly linear lightning transforms the sign, the unique side, only one sign of the charge, and so if this charge is negative, it will fly and will be rejected by the electric field of Earth. That was the idea. So if analyze from this point of view, for the moderate energy bolt lightnings with energy about density energy 10 and 9, 10 and 10 joules per meter cube, there can be several ways. It is pure electric. There is no understanding how electric ball lightning is formed. Does it has cavity also? If we can understand that there are problems with the electric field, because electric fields on the Earth cannot be higher, cannot be generally higher than the breakdown fields, and there are questions how it can fly, can exploit, and what is the form. another, what I have shown you, either chemical combustion takes place inside, or phase transition, appearance of vapor inside. Here we can the cavity is produced in this in the full grid area. Combustion gives about 10 in 7th power joules per kilogram. Levitation can be at the charge 10 in -3 or -4 coulombs, and surface voltage can be 10 in 8th power per cubic for meter, volts per meter, and it can explode. In case of the phase transition, the cavity is the same in the full grid area. The energy to vaporization about 1.5 order of magnitude then of combustion. Levitation has the same effect as in case of the combustive bolt, and the surface electric voltage of the surface can be as in this case, and everything is the same. But here's the chemical idea. It is the phase transition idea. But in any case, with these three approaches, we can say that there are problems of existing series energy below 10 and 10th power joules per meter cube. Penetration through glasses is under the question. Magnetic properties are very difficult to explain. The transformation from tape to ball, disappearance of golden bracelets and rings. So we have to look for another idea which can be fruitful. Usually at the consideration of ball lightning, there are problems with classical physics, and the approach to quantum physics does not help a lot. So maybe we don't know well its series of classical physics of 19th centuries from which we could obtain Maxwell equation. So with Zaitsev, we made some mathematical modeling, which was published in English. You can write here, it is email address. You can find the English version of this book, and it shows that if we consider the physical vacuum as in the previous times as ether, and we consider hydrodynamics of such physical vacuum, we can find that we can start from earlier equations for continuity, conservation of mass, and momentum. We can obtain equations, Maxwell equations, and the main idea is that vector potential is the velocity in this physical vacuum, the velocity of physical vacuum. For this physical vacuum in 1905, Mendeleev, Russian scientist, made some experiments and analysis which shows that this physical vacuum can consist of so-called particles, Newtonians, which are by 10 and 14th power smaller than protons. And in this case, all this physical vacuum consists of such small particles, densely consist, and it is can be considered as a fluid. So if we have so, then we can use classical approach. The energy density is in electrodynamics epsilon epsilon 0 e squared divided by 2. And in hydrodynamics of the fluid, the energy density is C multiplied by velocity squared divided by 2. C is some dimensional, some constant. If we have in this constant in kilograms per meter cube, we can say that our density energy in this physical vacuum has to have such a form. Or if we can set such an equation. From the electrodynamics and from physics, we know that the unit electromagnetic velocity is electromagnetic velocity of light. So we know this constant. From electric field, we can find from the experiments of lasers, where there was obtained the maximum electric field which can be produced without changing of the electric constant is 10 and 11th power volts per meter. From here, we can obtain the density of this physical vacuum. It is 10 by 10 and minus 6 kilogram per meter cube. If we consider this this substance, which is we considering as the physical vacuum, we consider as close to the ideal gas, then we can use such a gas dynamic equation with a debate about 5 divided by 3, and we can obtain that the pressure inside this this physical vacuum is about 10 and 11th power pascals. So we have obtained the parameters of the effect of the etheric, which appearance of a node of the object, and we can call it etheric ball lightning is realized. Imagine ball lightning as a thermal vortex of large scale compared to typical areas of magnetic field. Suppose that at the ball lightning boundary, the linear rotation velocity reaches the speed of light. It is necessary, otherwise we will not see this object. Since the speed of light is the characteristics of free propagation of disturbances, it follows from the analogy with gas dynamics that near the boundary of such a vortex, there will be some sort of layer, which is difficult to penetrate for structures, for structural media areas. The size of Newtonians is extremely small even in comparison with the sizes of electrons, protons, neutrons. Therefore, the boundary layer is all the more difficult to penetrate for such formations. From a law of conservation of momentum, the objects in the vortex tension, the Bohr-like solid particles will produce the surface like separating in centrifuge. As the result, the boundary layer is strengthened by a substance caught in ball lightning during its lifetime. The flow of this physical vacuum inside the shell of ball lightning can be quite complicated, but we will consider this in the simplest approach, which is developed in gas dynamics. Leitchansky is the book, where the ball lightning we consider as the ball rotating with the angular velocity W around the z-axis of Cartesian coordinates. So that is the picture of such an object. We can introduce the spherical coordinates with unit basis vectors. In linear, we can make such approach considering that the velocity of this ball on the surface is c. Then we can obtain all the known formulas for such a ball because they are obtained in Lobzhansky, and we can obtain we can obtain the velocity on the surface of this object, and we can obtain that the energy density of such layers of such an object will be described by this formula. If we integrate it over the volume, then we obtain the following formula, where we put the density of the physical vacuum and c and velocity of light. We obtain immediately that such a ball or such an object can have vortex object, vortex ball can have energy about 1.1 by 10 in 11th power joules per meter cubed. Accounting that when ball lightning objects influences, accounting that ball lightning does not reproduce all the energy, so we can see that this the estimate is rather close to observed in anomalous ball lightnings, and it shows that the concept of the concept as ball lightning as the object consisting of the physical vacuum is more or less proved. And in the methodology of mathematical modeling, such a correspondence is one of the confirmations of the model correctness. Now, let's consider some following conclusions. In the etheric interpretation of electrostatics, the acceleration of the ether flow in the radial direction beyond the boundary of ball lightning makes it negatively charged, and when it rotates, it obtains magnetic properties. In the etheric interpretation of the Bohr object charge does not obligatory has to be equilibrium between negative or positive charge in it. I want to say that if we consider in approach of hydrodynamics, the charge is not itself some point or some sort. It is some rotation. It is some rotation. It is source of the fluid. It is source of this fluid of Newtonians. So you cannot say that it has positive or negative charge. So when it will come out of the object, it will be considered as negative. If it will come into the ball or into the source, it will be considered as positive. The most surprising property of ball lightning is the ability to pass through solid objects, leaving no visible traces. The substance in the boundary layer of ball lightning may not have a high temperature, and In this case, it will not leave some traces. Due to extremely small sizes of Newtonians and a relatively large scale of their flow, the ether vortex can almost freely penetrate the objects. And after its penetrations, the boundary layer is restored from a substance that enters the ether vortex. It seems that the substance of ball lightning passes through the object. In fact, not a substance, but an etheric vortex of ball lightning passes through the object. The charge available to ball lightning explains its preference for interaction with glass. Glass is polarized in the electric field of the charged objects and attracts it to itself. The speed of ball lightning movement can be due to the electric field acting on it. For example, the speed of charged cloud motion is usually 5–10 meters per second. At the same time, so ball lightning which is attracted by this area where this cloud can move with such a velocity under the cloud. At the same time, there are no problems and no restrictions on the such ball lightning location height. The ring-shaped metal jewelry disappearance can be explained by induction of a strong current in them when ball lightning approaching, since ball lightning can have a very large electrical charge and creates intensity of the ether flow through the boundary layer. This absence of a severe bounce is most likely due its surface skin defensive reaction, in which the liquid evaporates almost instantaneously in the contact area. The ether, also called physical vacuum mechanism of ball lightning, explains the appearance of ball lightning in nature during a thunderstorm. So when it appears when the linear lightning strikes the ground, it can be assumed that a vortex ether, the vortex ether can be involved in the creation of the linear lightning channel. First, the flow of the ether appears, which transformates and moves molecules and atoms in the linear lightning channel. So you can see that it can be very unusual, but the physical vacuum can be the source for explanation of very many unusual properties of linear lightning. The performed analysis shows that the physical vacuum model of ball lightning allows to explain almost of its unique properties and without complicated theoretical constructions. The ball lightning characteristics obtained from the model are close to those observed. Thus, in the methodology of mathematical modeling, the proposed ball lightning model can be accepted as the adequate to real phenomena of anomalous ball lightning with anomalously huge energy. Thank you for attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Bychkov. Thank you for